meeting to order. It's 8:30. With that said, is there any public comments? Any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to line item 3, approval of the meeting minutes, April 18th, 2024.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made and second. Excuse me. By Bob and James. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, approve our current agenda. Any changes?
I have no changes to the agenda, however, I have an amendment to the bills payable. I forgot to make a change after the packets were sent out, but I can just read what those are.
Yeah, would you?
Yes.
Okay. Other than that read in aspect, do we have a motion for the agenda? Or consent item, or agenda, excuse me.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ross, second by Brian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approve consent items.
Okay, consent items and the bills payable. I have, it's in your packet on page 5. However, I have an edit to the county of Winona. Right now, I just have $1,769.50. That was just for March. April and May was not ready yet, and so after the packets were sent out, then I did get that. I might note that there are still some issues going on with Winona County's, I don't know if it's their accounting system or whatever, but things are fine until December of 2023, and then the allocations for the Whitewater starting in January. It's very random, and they put in the right numbers, and it's almost twice, and so we've been having it manually audit or changed. And so I do have that. So for April, the amount is $1,660.11. And for May, $5,788.72. That's 3 pay periods for that month.
And what was made? 5,007?
Oh, for May, it was $23,59.11. And then the total is $5,788.72. And it's in here. I just didn't, I spaced out on getting this updated for everybody to see. So the total for expenditures are $28,306.50.
Any questions on that? We talked a little bit about that, didn't we? I was in one day.
Yeah, and it's,
What's going on with?
and you know, the new finance director started on Monday. So I'm hoping that this person will be able to, I know he's got other things to do right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of top brass that's changed hands in Winona County, and so planning and finance. And I actually sat on the interview panel for the finance. They asked me to come in on that. So I think he's going to be very good.
Good.
So
That's good.
I like Pat, but I think he's going to be different than Pat, and so I think it should work good.
And it's Chuck, right?
I think it's Chuck. Yeah. Chuck.
I forget. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Chuck. But he interviewed very well, and he seems to know what's going on.
Good.
So,
That's encouraging.
okay. Any other discussion to the consent items? Hearing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ross, second by Bob. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Board reports. Start over James. What do you got?
Pretty much the same old stuff, I'd say. A couple grass waterways, some well sealings, extending the one contract for rotational grazing and fencing. Pretty much it.
Right.
kind of off the topic of this, Heidi Welsh, our county administrator, has applied for another job at Dakota County, and she's one of the finalists. And so we might be looking for a new county administrator in the next few months here.
It's a big deal. We went through that. I sat in on all those panel interviews for over a year. Even before I was county commissioner, they had me come in for the public side of it. It's pretty intense interviews, you know.
Yeah,
That's a big position.
But it's, and that's if she gets the job, but she has previously worked for Dakota County, so she is pretty well known.
There's a lot of this going on out there, trying to find good people. It's been tough.
Yeah, another issue is her mother, I believe, has dementia. They're looking up there. So
fun.
She's got more family up there, so I think that's kind of pursuit for them.
Anything else, Brian?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, Lynn.
Well, been a little while lately, but Bob was at the creek restoration project. That was really interesting. That
Shows that.
The
Gorman?
No.
Gorman.
Oh,
Yeah.
And really a nice job. Like, it was a straight vicious cut since maybe 1970, and now it's a nice meandering grass covered. Looked great.
Sure.
And then I went to Area 7 meeting at Stewartville for soil and water, and pretty much the same thing of much money available, need to hire people, and I hope it all works out, I guess. So, other than that, got my hay baled. So,
Lucky you.
Yeah.
that was always, it was really on my mind for a while there.
We got Russ.
Nothing earth-shattering, thankfully, that I can remember. I went to the Winlac meeting here, what was that, a week ago, and then they focused or had a promotional video regarding the Gorman restoration. The only observation, I aired this at our last soil and water board meeting. It's a beautiful restoration job, well done. The unfortunate part is tax dollars were used in the 1940s to straighten it, and now tax dollars were used again to make it back the way it was. So that's kind of an unfortunate, waste of tax dollars, but they should have left it alone in the first place in hindsight, but that's Monday morning quarterbacking, so we won't do that. But beautiful project, beautiful restoration. The other one was, remind me, Sheila, there was Trout Run Creek?
Yeah, that was on Tuesday. Yep.
And so our Winona County's SWCD was kind of in charge of that event. I was unable to attend. I don't know how it turned out, but I'm guessing it was a nice day. And
It was, and Dale was there, and the thing, of course, there was lots of rain just beforehand, so it was difficult to demonstrate how to do the AIS monitoring because you need a clear stream for that, and it was not clear. But you could see that it was, even though there was a lot of rain, it was in the banks where it should have been. And so we could see the effects of that stream restoration work. But it was good.
I know they had roughly 40 people RSVP, so was it well attended?
Yes, I would say about 50-ish.
Yeah, about 50.
Yeah.
A lot of county staff,
So that's,
about 80 people.
yeah, so that was a win, a positive project as well as the Gorman, but I guess that is all I have.
Good. Yeah, Bob.
We talk about administration, department heads, Waukesha County's had a new assessor, director of taxpayer services left, zoning administrator, all within the last few 12 to 15 months, assessor. That was mentioned at the District 9 AMC meeting, it's counties poaching other counties for employees.
States poaching counties,
It's
federal
just a,
poaching state.
yep, it's just a vicious cycle for employees. Had our Board of Equalization the other night, only had one party, and they were challenging their classification. It was 2.97, and they wanted to be classified as ag because they do cut flowers, which I get the point, but the Department of Revenue doesn't recognize cut flowers as ag. So, otherwise, pretty quiet.
Okay. Just got enough going on in Winona County between our LEC center and trying to figure out what to do with that. I'm trying to actively play neutral to figure out, we know we need to do something, but what's the least cost to the taxpayer, and what do we actually need, and not get the cart in front of the horse and make decisions today and finance them that down the road we want to kind of undo, like making a stream bank straight and then putting it back again. So let's not do this twice. So that's one big thing going on. A little more on the soil side, water side. It's refreshing to hear that some other people outside of the board, even internally, and they're even on the board, I've coined my phrase, and again, it's just something I've said for years, of education over regulation, and looking at this water quality thing, and I'm constantly pushing that we can't blame a particular group of people, and we're starting to, I feel that we're starting to open up and realize that human nature is to find the fault and go after it hard, whether it's true or not. And I think it's starting to open up a little bit. And so that's good. I like that. I'm hearing other people say the quote. So that's a positive. Being in the ag sector all throughout the U.S. right now, it's muddy waters. There's a lot of prevent plant. North Dakota's got a large pocket. We have farmers up north that still haven't put corn in the ground. We've got farmers out in Wisconsin that still haven't put corn in the ground. The other side, the flip side, is the people that did get the corn in the ground are now worried about nitrogen management. Things look pretty good now because we've released a lot of nitrogen, both organic, whether it's manure or synthetic or whatever it is. But this thing could stand itself on its head pretty fast here in 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and we could have some pretty ugly crops. So we'll see where that goes. We've got a lot of talk about the end fixers again because of that. Can I still get them on? Is it too late? Had a lot of talk about nitrogen stabilization. Usually in these types of scenarios, when nitrogen gets high or we have an adverse weather effect, is when people start to focus on nitrogen management again. They don't fall back to, well, let's go spread some urea and have a good day. So it's a good thing to have because it puts focus back. Again, it's a good and a bad. It's not good because we have to do it, but it is good because we learn from it. And so we've had a lot of conversations about going back to the end fixers, biologicals, things like that. Even people I've never talked to are called. So the word must be getting out. So let's see, the last thing, we had our Commissioner Road Tour on Tuesday. We actually spent a fair amount of time up on this side of the county. There's a couple big projects that are happening down here. The first and second largest bridges in Winona County will both be getting replaced in the next 2 years, and they happen to be just right down the road. And so they do encompass the Whitewater River, and so the diversion dikes that they put in and the channeling systems that they put in, we're out looking at that. We're obviously looking at the road projects and what they mean. And one of the projects we have is County 31 that goes up a steep hill, and the DNR and the EAW studies that we've had to do and stuff for stream bank and impact and different things like that. So it was good to see the one major project's in focus right now. The big bridge down here in Elba, that's the largest span in Winona County. That one's scheduled to go 2026, I believe. So 2025, 26. And it was interesting to see how they're changing the bridge design to have less impact on flow and debris. so that the flow is more continuous. And, you know, and what that can do for just habitat and water quality, et cetera, as well as just the functionality of the bridges. So, two major projects down here in Whitewater that directly impact the river happening right now, and well, one happening now and one happening later. So, other than that, erosion has been a little bit of an issue with some of these rains that we've been hearing from farmers, and it was interesting to see or hear some of the comments on the wall as we drove around about, hey, look at those nice waterways, or hey, we should have some waterways put in over here. People that really didn't, and I got asked a lot of ag questions on the tour, obviously, and I was able to you know, both promote and defend at the same time what agriculture is doing. So I think one of the biggest things that I was able to do, and I made a point of it, is to say, used to be a dairy, 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 used to be a dairy. And I'd say, yep, used to be 18 dairies on this strip, there's 2. Yep, used to be 5 here, there's none. Yep, and to really open up the eyes of how the changing aspect. And we drive by a beautiful alfalfa field and say, look at all that beautiful alfalfa, but you know what it takes to have that? It takes cows. So, you know, so that part of it was nice too. So that's all I have. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to 7A, financial update from our auditor letter, draft audit actually.
All right, for updates for April, for our checking and our money market, we're at 110,700. And in May, that was 114,400, and that is because we received the payment on a grant. But anyway, just trying to get stuff done, and no big changes in either of the reconciliation summaries. And then we have an auditor's management letter that needs to be signed today. This came the day after our last board meeting. So
Peterson's?
yeah. So I have to sign it, and Commissioner Elstein has to sign it. And then we also have the draft audit, because that was done. So these should be done at different meetings, but it is what it is.
It's what it is. And we've used Peterson for years.
Yes.
I actually suggested a number of years ago for the Whitewater to switch to Smith Schaefer because they tend to be a little more in depth, and we were trying to get a lot of things figured out, but they also come with a cost. So Peterson's been a pretty fair value in my mind for a number of years, and they work with a lot of municipalities. I'm sure you guys have seen them. So if we ever got ourselves in a situation where we're a little more in depth, I would probably switch. But in the meantime, Peterson's gone well.
Right.
So.
And the thing is, you know, with an SWCD you have staff, whereas
It's a little more complex.
I'm
The
a
staff.
Winona County employee, so you have no FICA,
Right.
no employee-related finance issues.
We also don't have any assets. We don't.
Right.
You know,
So it's keep it simple.
keep it simple, and they charge fair.
And I included the draft audit. Not much changes from the year before, but I just wanted to note that, again, this started last year, and they had just had to make note that because one person is doing the finances, that poses a risk. But this board approves all transactions, all expenditures, so that it's not Sheila writing off a check and doing something with it.
That's the checks and balances, and the auditor always says that when we say, well,
Right.
2 other people have to sign on anything that goes out. So
Right,
standard issue is never one person.
yeah.
And we've seen that how many times.
Yeah, so segregation of duties was noted as an issue, and financial statement presentation. And it says the management has accepted responsibility for the financial statements and reviewed them. So that's at these meetings.
And it's our documented check and balance for the audit for that purpose.
Right.
So we have it in writing, not just this is what we do. And that's,
Right.
so we've got it both ways.
Right. So anyway, those were highlighted again as was in the last year's audit. Um,
Yeah, 'cause that's come up multiple times.
mhm.
Any other discussion on that? Thoughts? We can maybe do all these as one, or do, let's take one at a time.
Right.
Just need a motion for line item 7A. Financial update, management representation letter, 2023 draft audit. To
I'll
approve.
move to approve.
Motion by Bob, second by Brian. Any other discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On to line item B, Whitewater Drinking Water Protection Grant updates. First off is Mr. Behrens.
Do we need a draft audit approval, or is that at the next meeting?
For,
The audit of 2023?
well,
You did them both?
I did
at
them all
once.
three as one.
Okay, got it.
Yep, I did them as line item A.
Perfect.
So
All right.
we'll do, well, Conservation Field Day, that's not going to require a motion, but we can, I mean, if it's in the motion, it's going to be okay, but we will need a motion for Mr. Behrens' payment. So
Right, and a copy of that was in the packets.
20-some thousand. You
Yes.
guys looked at it?
And yep, the total cost was $29,922. The grant pays 75%, so that comes to $22,441.50. And so this was finished, I want to say it was towards the end of May. And so I have a copy here. Did I include this in the packet? I can't
Yes, you
remember.
did.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you got everything that you need to review it. And so it was a mound system. So I would need Commissioner Elsing's signature on this when it's approved.
Any discussion on Mr. Behrens? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is that Brian? I didn't hear.
Yes,
That was-
so moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Brian, second by Ross to approve the payment for Mr. Behrens' septic system. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right, on to the Conservation Field Day update.
Okay, I was hoping of having some expenditures for this today, but we'll do them at the next meeting. One of the action items that we have for the drinking water protection grant is to have field day, educational field day for farmers. And, just to kind of highlight cover crops and other good practices that are going on in the landscape. And so we're working with the 3 SWCs, and so Jenna Rasmussen at Wabasha SWC and Shona over at Olmsted. And so I appreciate Ross for being able to host this field day. And he's got some really neat practices that we can look at. And so I'm hoping for a great turnout, and the weather's going to be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be August 1st, and we're including lunch, so it's from 10 to 2:30. And I think the SWCDs have this on their website, this flyer, so people can register. I haven't heard of anybody registering yet, but I don't know, Ross, did you want to kind of give a highlight of?
I'll start with a humorous. The reason we host it is we have it in writing. We get all the leftover steak sandwiches.
Perfect.
Verbalize
I
that.
always
So
think,
they-
I always
so they
remember
don't need to
make a
that.
motion on that?
So they ordered twice as many as they're expecting?
3 times as much.
Okay, good.
Steak sandwiches for me for lunch for the next 4 months, no problem.
Okay,
We have, we're certainly not the greatest, I think we're centrally located, it's kind of why it fits and whatever. There's other farms that are doing more cutting edge things than we are, but we were a little gung-ho when we started our planting season, so it was like April 18th, and we tried. It's going to be an interesting field day because we're going to highlight some failures. We're going to highlight some things that did not work. We tried to do just a one-pass vertical till on an alfalfa field. We tried to do no-till just by bumping our down pressure on our planter, and it normally worked, but we did it too early, and it did not work. But one of the speakers is Keith Speltz, and he has a Lemkin machine. It's a German, it's basically a glorified moldboard plow that flips the soil at 2.5, 3 inches. So our failure, he came through with his machine and flipped the soil and created a perfect seed bed for us to replant. So it's a new technology. It's shallow tillage, and it's to terminate his cover crops. He's an organic farm. He uses it to terminate cover crops, and it's a perfect tillage tool that he's had for 6-8 years. But
It takes a lot of horse pull.
I guess just a question.
Go ahead.
I don't know much about it, but naturally you still got to be on a contour, otherwise that could potentially be a problem if it tills.
certainly yes, and we have small contour strips. Our average field size on that farm is 5 acres.
So then, yeah. the thing
Contour
that-
strips, waterways, yes, I understand what you're saying.
No, I just was checking. And the thing that I've been doing is on the ends of my fields, like on 247, Bob goes by there because he lives right. But I just couldn't deal with the end rows a lot of times on the steep hills, so I just left like 50 feet of grass, which if I didn't have a good landlord that didn't charge me an arm and a leg, I couldn't probably dream of doing that, but that worked super great, no headlands and that kind of a deal, but you know, you can't use the land.
Yes.
I can use it for waterways, to bale grass and stuff off.
Does Keith have a wavy culture or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really acts more like, I always call it like a glorified soil finisher, but they take speed to get going, and they're a little more aggressive. You can make them more aggressive, way more aggressive than a vertical till machine, but in essence, and that's what they are, and they work phenomenal. They take some horsepower to pull. And it's kind of an all-in-one type situation, but they do a really good job of prepping that topsoil.
It's a tool that most farmers are not familiar with firsthand, myself included, until this year. And so we hired him to come and do that tillage for us, and it worked out very well. There's pros and cons to everything we do, and there's a con to that one because the biomass, or there's an argument that the biome should not be flipped over because you destroy the the biology that's already there. You terminate it by putting it underground. But the flip side is we had a crop that failed, and we had to get rid of our 18 inches of alfalfa so that we could get a new seed bed, so that we hurry up and get some germination off our corn. But it worked, so we're going to demonstrate that. We've got a 17 or 18-year-old prairie planting. There too, we had intentions of getting part of it burned and part of it not burned. It did not work out. Ran out of time. So an 18-year-old CRP warm season grass planting will be walkable from the site. Living still fence, including white cedar trees, white spruce, red cedar, and lots of various fruit-bearing shrubs. Red splendor crabapple, serviceberry, juneberry, American cranberry bush. So people can go walk right up to them, touch them, see them very close to the event. So the other thing is feedlot related. We did 15 years ago, I believe, we installed, I don't know the correct terminology, basically we put gutters on our livestock confinement buildings. We still have a partial open lot, so the rainwater no longer goes through the feedlot, but the rainwater that falls on the cement drains some manure into this exclusion paddock that filters the nutrients, is supposed to hold and slow the nutrients, and then the rainwater slowly, a new channel created down to the lower culvert. So just some little minor modifications to our feedlot site that we made 15 years ago will be on display as well. Working farm. There's 30, 40 Holstein heifers in there that have access to the grass, and we still give them some grain and hay as well, supplemental feeding, but they are grazing as well. And the site itself is going to be on I want to say it's an 8-acre field that we planted oats only. As soon as we get weather, we're going to harvest the oats for oatlage, and then there is no alfalfa in the understory, so normally we have an oats nurse crop and alfalfa in the understory, but this time we're gonna leave that field alone and set the tent up and have parking, and hopefully leave enough room, potential demonstrations for equipment. So potentially we could use the Lemkin and show, demonstrate with it is the hope. So that's kind of the highlights, and honestly, on the menu, I was told, is they're trying to get like the Houston Cattlemen's or something, you know, the steak sandwiches up hot off the grill type thing, so a unique food item to attract farmers. Most of us are motivated by food, I will admit.
And it shows.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. To you, to me.
Well, ad for Weight Watchers coming up next. So there, that's about all I have to say about that.
Well, back to that lemkin. You know, if you've got a decent soil structure, you can do a lot in here. And there is talk about flipping that biome. You've got to get down to really a non-oxygenated area for that to make a larger difference. So when they talk about or deepening that oxygenated or the aerated zone, that allows you to actually get away with a lot more. The only thing you really becomes a problem is when you pulverize the soil, because you destroy the aggregate structure in the soil. If you can keep that, and that's what's nice about these lemkins, even these vertical tillage machines, is that they don't really destroy it like you would with the old discs and things like that would sit there and almost grind away at it, or the rotavators that would grind away. I remember when I was a kid, Mom would, slow down, Bradley, you know, really want to mix up the garden good, and then it'll turn to concrete, right? So that's what's nice about these newer tillage equipment, is it's still, when tillage is necessary, because it is necessary, you can do a lot in that top 6 inches and not affect a thing, because that's where's the fence post right off? Right at the top. It's that oxygenated zone, and that's what you're trying to keep. So it's when you start going real deep and flipping those things over, you're taking an anaerobic and aerobic zone and changing it. Monsanto learned that back in the 2010, 12, 14 range, and they told everybody you couldn't get rid of the trash to go buy a moldboard plow and drop it 14 inches deep. So they went out in western Minnesota, did a lot of work out there in the Dakotas, and it was, I think, 1 to 7. And for everyone that was ordered, there was 7 on back order for moldboard plows back then. And so everybody finally got them. They went out, they flipped that stuff over, and they put their beans in. They come back after the beans, did their shallow tillage. Another year later, they tilled her back up after the corn, and they took all that old residue, 2-year-old residue, flipped it right back on top, and it didn't work. So then 3 years later, there was a moldboard plow on the end of every driveway for sale, brand new and shiny, because it didn't work. And because they took an oxygen, something that needs oxygen to break that residue down, put it into an unoxygenated zone, and it just sat there like a landfill. So it didn't work, and that's why you saw those moldboard plows for sale for years. So you could do a lot up here and keep that whole line going just fine if you've got a halfway decent soil. So, no harm done. Okay, well that's good. Thank you, guys. So let's see. We are on to line item C, Clean Water Fund competitive grant discussion.
Okay. Every year Bowser does the RFP for the Clean Water Fund applications. It has not been released yet, so I have no idea what it's going to say, what the requirements are, but I do know that the format will be different this year. And also what will be included is accelerated implementation funding. I don't know, because they're going to change all the verbiage and everything. But so anyway, I did get an email from Dave Copeland, our Bowser conservationist, just to give us a heads up. And I think the closing, if it's a similar timeline, it'll be kind of towards the end, maybe 3rd week or so, maybe the 4th week of August. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up. I haven't seen the RFP, and it'll be due, once it comes out, it'll be due in later August. So that will be after our next meeting, August 15th. But I was just trying to solicit ideas from the board on what things I should try to come up with. I guess one of the things I thought of, knowing that the accelerated implementation funding will be in this RFP, is that would be kind of nice to tie in and try and hit some of those work plan items that are in the state's response to the nitrate and groundwater. And I was thinking specifically of inventorying wells. Olmsted County, I think, they've been working on that for a long time, and so maybe they wouldn't have that much to do, but definitely there will be outreach pieces for landowners. And so anyway, that was the one thing that I was thinking of. I'm open to any ideas this board might have, whether it's accelerating implementation or projects and practices. We already have the well sealing grant, and I think cover crops are already covered by a lot of the grant funding through other sources with SWCD.
Well, I'm not saying to fund this, but one of the things that I've learned here in the last, I'm going to say, several months, we talked about earlier, this education over regulation and really beginning to expose the reality of it is this issue of water quality nitrate has existed for a long time. We're just, for whatever reason, now has been, we're going to focus on this. So it's been going on. But here's what's interesting. Ross Dunbar, works for the county, said that since 1989, when the well standards came into play, that's when they actually had to document and prove that we're doing the well correctly. We got a guess as to what the percentage of wells that are now out of compliance with nitrates are since that came into play in 1989. How many wells are out of compliance and have high nitrates since that law came into place and everybody started doing it?
80+%.
No, how many are out of compliance?
Oh,
Like how many have high nitrates and have an
okay.
issue since that law?
Okay, I thought you meant the wells that were drilled previous to
Nope.
that.
No.
Post
Okay.
that. So when they actually started creating the standards and here's what you have to do, et cetera, it's 0.3%.
I thought it was 0.03. but-
0.03 or point-
Either way, they're
0.03.
small,
It's
yeah.
virtually none,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So what, and I've claimed this for years. We just recently had a local farmer here, not too far from here, come in and had some issues mixing up some fertilizer. And I said, let's take a water sample. Actually, one of my employees said, let's take a water sample. They brought the water sample back, and I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of them over the years. And I looked right at it, and there's nothing on it. The nitrates are, if you looked at that water sample, you'd say it's pretty decent water. But I called the gentleman up, and I said, you got a shallow well, don't you? Yeah, how'd you know? Well, it's right here in the water test. Oh, they don't put that on there. I said, yeah, I know, but you got a shallow well. And I said, by the way, this looks good. And this here on this particular thing, it looks good. And this one is. But I said, they're all slightly elevated, still within parameters. And I said, you better check your spray program. Because these things could have an adverse effect on your spray program. You have to add more AMS. And oh, by the way, when you add phosphorus and that amount of calcium at that carbonate level, and I know you got a shallow well because your carbonate level's up because it's still in the limestone, you're not down deeper. And he goes, yeah, well, Grandpa drilled the well wherever it got water. If it wasn't brown, if it was brown, that's the old saying, if it was brown, you go down, right? And the reality of it is what we have is we have a lot of substandard wells that were drilled cheap. Let's get to the water, and that's as far as we're going to go because we don't want to spend any more money on it. And so truly the drinking water, it's going to have the most effect on everything. Carbonate, nitrates, anything that's out there in the ground is going to filter through that first water pool. When they stuck a camera down in Altura and looked at the wells, when they re-drilled that wells, they actually found that one aquifer was draining into another aquifer. So we're sitting around pointing fingers at everybody and we don't even understand what's going on, and we haven't even gone back and looked at the fact that there's a pile load of substandard wells all over the United States, let alone here in southeast Minnesota, that should have never been put where they were put because there's a whole system that the good Lord put into play to filter everything out here. And so what's very interesting to me is this 0.3 or 0.03, which is even better percentage, that when done correctly, this whole problem goes away. I'm not saying that we can't educate, and I'm not saying that we can't do a better job in agriculture, on our lawns, with our municipality sewer systems, the piping, all that stuff. Absolutely, we can all do better. And that's this education and fighting some of these issues. But to run around and say we've got this national disaster and everybody's affected and you better, at all costs, even if it means lose agriculture or suffer, we need to do something now. It's just, it's not the ticket. So I think getting the message out, if there's funding to get the message out, and one of the things that I brought up at our county board meeting, we've had these multiple discussions as we're seeing funding come in, and I said, do we have any sort of documentation on the depth of any of these wells? If we're going to use our money, taxpayers' money, to determine that there's a problem, I want all the information I can get, including the depth of the well. Somebody's got it. You might have to go look behind the refrigerator to get it. They might have to make a couple phone calls, but I want to understand the depth of these wells. A lot of people don't know. I think people know. They just necessarily, I think they don't know offhand that the information is their grandpa, dad, the local guy that they've always used, the Hofschulte that's been around forever. Somebody's got it documented somewhere. And to figure that out and determine that, or if you had to put a new pump in, you're going to know how deep it is, right? So it'd be interesting to me to have a correlation of well depth and the percentage of problems associated to the well depth, and to say, hey, this is really interesting that since we've done this correctly, we have a virtually 100% clean slate.
But doesn't that argue for regulation rather than education per se?
How's it regulation?
Well, I mean, because of the well standards.
The well standards, yeah. Well, I'm not saying to put I'm not saying that you have to drill a deeper well. What I'm saying is that if you choose not to drill a deeper well, that's on you. You get to drink the water. But don't come to the taxpayer to fund whatever issue that's created. So that's what I've said also on the home ownership side. People forget that they see a place out in the country that has a septic system and a well system, and they fall in love with the house, and boy, they check the roof, and they have somebody come in and make sure there's no radon or whatever it is, but nobody's out making sure the well is correct, right? We put it into a standard somewhat with the septic system, but then when those things go bad, they're hooking the taxpayer to go back and say, well, do this for me. I don't think that's proper. And if you look at the septic and sewer and water systems in town, you're basically paying for somebody else to maintain that and make sure it's proper. But if you've taken it on yourself to do it all yourself, that I think should be an education piece to the banks, to the realtors, to the general public that says, hey, by the way, you could have a hidden problem here, because the realtor ain't going to expose it. He wants to sell a house. The bank wants to give a loan, right? And, so I think that educational piece comes into the purchasing of that property. And then the second side of it is hey, we've identified a trend. The shallower the well, the bigger the potential of the problem. When done correctly, that goes away. So I don't think there has to be any regulation to it. It has to be an exposure as to what the problem is. And then also a preventative measure for anybody that might be looking to purchase a property that has a well or a septic system on it, to ensure that, hey, this could be a potential issue for you. Do you want to work something out with the seller and the buyer?
So like when Winona County has a point of sale for septic system inspection, having a similar process for...
It doesn't have to be a law, it doesn't have to be a rule, it doesn't have to be anything. It's just simply, hey, if I walked into Olmsted Clinic, if I walked into Apache Mall, I grabbed 100 people and said, if you bought a property out in the country, what would be your first thing you'd think about? How about identify your top 10 things? Do you think the well would be on it? They'd say, does the well work? Or would they be concerned about how deep it is, the quality of the water? No, I don't think most people would. They probably wouldn't even put it on there. So that's what I mean. That's that educational aspect, that rather than buying it, now I got a problem and who do I blame? Let's look at the person that bought it that didn't do their homework to begin with, because again, they may not even have known that could be a potential problem. So that's that exposure to this and the proactive rather than the reactiveness that I think would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I don't know if there's monies for that, for more of that educational piece.
Well, the accelerated implementation, from what I understand, does have an educational, and it has a outreach piece to it. So maybe that would be the category that would best fit. Of course, I'd have to wait till the RFP comes out to see what it does say.
And I do realize there's not a whole lot of home transactions that happen, but
Right.
they are trying to happen, and they're getting more and more. And but again, I alluded to this gentleman. I said, maybe it's time to look at putting a little deeper well in, or you're going to have to put some sort of an osmosis system in because your spray is going to work better. Anything you're doing down in agriculture with your well water is going to work better if you get that done right. And it really opened up their eyes, and the money savings that they could have. So
Who's the gentleman that said this about the 1989, only .03 or .3?
Ross
Dunsmore.
Dunsmore?
Yeah.
He's
He gave a presentation to the county board, and he broke out with,
So he's a Winona County employee? Sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he does the designated well program.
Yep.
And so he classified, this is the condition for our pre-code wells, and then after we have the well program. And definitely if you have a pre-code well, it's vulnerable.
if you're
Right.
putting in a new well, it has to fall under the code standards. That's fine. The James comment to, isn't that regulation? No, it's not saying that because you have a shallow well or an inadequate well that you immediately need to go drill one. It's just simply exposing the fact that, hey, when Grandpa tried to save a buck, you've been paying for it, and now you want the taxpayer to get you off the hook. Well, that's where this whole educational aspect could come into play. And then again, you look at this gentleman where he said, this might be very advantageous for you to make a change on your farm because the cost effectiveness of it, and let them make that decision. I just found that amazing, that virtually 100% were good when done correctly. And prior to that, there was no documentation, there was no required anything. So you could, as a well driller, you could just stick a pipe in the ground, and you hit water, and if they didn't like the color of the water, you went down a little more.
So one other thing, Clean Water Fund competitive grant item, we discussed it briefly at the Winona County SWCD meeting, was I believe Amanda Gentry is going to be charged with doing a little more work, additional work with MMPs, manure management plans.
Right.
And it's extremely understaffed, and there's not a lot of resources or help.
And it's a lot of work.
So if we could get some of the Clean Water Fund money or whatever to help with staff, to help with training, to help with at least pay.
It depends on how
they
they
could pay
work
for
with the
soil
RFP
sample
then.
testing,
Yeah.
they could pay for manure testing, they
Sure.
could pay for testing,
Sure.
and at least we could incentivize more producers to comply with subsidized testing.
Okay.
My
Good
guess
idea.
is it probably can't go to direct staffing, but if you go to things that accommodate staffing,
Right.
that'd be my...
That's
The new car.
Oh, they're talking a new car. I didn't go to the last meeting, so...
okay. Great ideas.
Price
Okay.
is right.
Well, I will see what the RFP comes out and how it's worded, and see if I can incorporate some of those and have them into a application that can be approved at the next meeting, and hopefully the due date is after our next meeting. And I guess even if it isn't, I can still submit it and you can approve it after the fact, because we haven't received the money yet. So anyway, that's kind of what I was considering and thinking about. So thanks for your ideas.
Got a well done problems with you.
Just a side note, I'm just blown away by Ross Dunsmore's comment. I think that should be
Oh, that's what I'm trying
front
to
and
do.
center.
That's what I am
on
trying
every
to do right now.
SWCD
That's why I'm talking
page.
about it.
Put it on top of every SWCD page. That's a powerful piece of information.
100%.
And it's
And-
factual.
And it's factual, and it really shifts the focus as to what the problem potentially is. And that if we understand the filtering process of every different type of soil structure, when we drilled wells, we didn't pay attention to that. We just went to where the water looked the cleanest, and away we went. And in some cases, it was, well, it's iron, it's brown, well, that's going to cost you another 10 grand to go deeper. Nope, leave it the way it is, and I'll have to scrub the toilet, you know? I mean, I'm serious. So we put one in at the farm multiple times in different locations, and that's what it was. And, you know, it was whatever it took to get decent water. So I find this interesting, and I am doing exactly that. I'm blowing that up because I think that educational piece, not only reactively, but also now proactively when you're looking at purchasing a property, could be huge for everybody. And really making that part of the decision to buy a parcel. So,
Okay.
all right, on to any other discussion? Any other ideas? Agency reports, line item 8. Anybody have anything?
I have no updates from anybody.
Okay. Hearing none. Any other discussion, any other comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Just mention the next meeting date first, I think, right?
August
August
15th.
15th.
August 15th. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Ross, second by Bob to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.